everybody, it is Taylor of Summerdale Soul here. Today I'm going to be working on bracing my driver's seat and securing my battery. So, procrastinating a little further for those of you who may be following along on electrical components and bodywork, but these things do need to be done, so let's knock them out.
Alright, so let's kick it off with a seat brace that doesn't fit so well. Fret not, there's a solution. And listen, while I'm happy that I found the solution, I'm still a little salty that this worked. And now that the bracket passes the fitment test after, of course, being professionally bent, I went ahead and laid everything out so I knew exactly where things were going. There are a good few parts here, but it's actually pretty simple. Wow, I really thought I had a better tan going. God, I look like Pinky in the Brain. Anyway, I took the top of the seat cover off. And at this point, while I've made my fair share of scratches and dents on this chassis, I still want to try and protect it where I can. So I've added some foam insulation in between these U-brackets, so I'm not going to have too much scratching on those crossbars. It's not a perfect solution, but it makes me feel better. So with the way that my seat is mounted, it made more sense to run the bar on top of this cross member here. I'm trying to make sure that bracket has enough clearance over those harness holes to ensure a good fit. Hot tip, I found it really helpful to actually hold it sideways so you can, see what you're doing. With two in, it felt like it was secure enough to leave alone so I could grab the other bolts to install. With the remaining bolts in place, it was time to slide the tube through and mock up the rest of the components. So I actually ended up flipping this upside down so it was a touch more stable, but I'll show you guys that a little bit later. For now, you can kind of see the general setup that I'm going for. Now that I've confirmed it looks good, I tighten up those bolts so they are nice and snug. As you can see here, I flipped this upside down as I mentioned earlier and feel that it's now in a good place to mark where I want to drill through this bracket. Thankfully, this does not have to be an exact science as I'm just trying to get this through the seat. With the marks in place, now I've separated the bracket. And because I love to live dangerously, I've chosen a drilling surface on wheels. I am very smart. It worked though. With the holes drilled out and the bracket in the correct orientation, I was able to re-mock up the bracket and mark exactly where I needed to drill the holes into the seat. Again, thankfully not an exact science. And time to remove once more. So since I didn't want to go about taking the seat off of the bracket, and I didn't quite have the clearance I needed for the drill in the back, I pushed these through several times so I could see exactly where I was going to be drilling on the front. It left enough of an indent where I could kind of see on the front side, and it ended up working out quite nicely. Okay, for real this time. This should be the final time that I actually install the bracket. No promises for other components though. I added the washer to the bolt and really hoped that it would line up. Hey, success. I chose to put the head of the bolt on the driver's side. It seemed to sit a little bit more flush than the rest of the bolt and the nut on the other end, but I think it should be okay. I ran the bolt through the center of the bar to make sure everything lined up nicely, and so far, so good. After I knew I had the all clear from every component, I went ahead and locked in that bracket into the back of the seat. After getting this thing nice and snug on the back of the seat, I could tell exactly how much flex there was. I was very happy to be installing this seat brace. With the distance to the brackets nicely mocked up, it was time to mark where I needed to drill through the tube. And of course, remove the component once more. I'm getting there. Oh, look at this handy dandy setup I've created. Isn't that such a secure way to drill something? It's honestly still not that great, but I'm just so proud of myself for trying. Safety 3rd, 5th, 11th? I tease, but it actually works pretty well. Definitely one of the more secure setups that I've had during several dangerous drilling activities. Did I get it? I got it. And I totally nailed it the first time. This is so not me, just making it look easier than the time that I had. I reinstalled this so I knew exactly where it was going to be mounted. And then super low-key just put this right in, you know, maybe gave it a few extra tippy taps. But just know that no additional drilling was required whatsoever. And lastly, I tightened the final bolt in place. Don't be mad at me, I couldn't find the wrench. And there you have it. That's a seat brace. Pretty straightforward. Took some time, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I may need to trim the back for the trunk, but I'll get to that later. For now, I need to turn my attention to this sketchy thing. It's time to update the zip tie bracket.
Instructions.
And because I'm basic, I went ahead and sprayed some of those components gold to match. Alright, so it's time for this little Duralast to bust out of its zip tie holdings and live in a plastic holder that is not super impressive. But it's what I've got, so for now, out you go. With everything out of the way, I tried to get as much shrapnel and rocks and dust off of this as I could. And here's where it very much came in handy to have all of those extra nuts and bolts lying around. This battery mount did not come with any hardware outside of what tightens the battery to the base. So with those nuts and bolts selected, it was time to puncture exactly where I was going to be drilling. And then drill those spots out. Although I have the steel floors, these were actually pretty easy to drill because I could get all my weight into it. With the mounting locations drilled and the hardware all sprayed up nicely, I ran the L bracket underneath to sit flush in the channel. And repeated that same process for the other side. With those in place, I was ready to mount the base of the battery mount. And of course, since nothing can be simple, next I was able to tighten the nuts below the steel floor where the bolts were poking through. And then I could finally add that chonky battery to its new home. That thing is a big boy. I might try to cut some weight here later, but for now it's what I've got. And the mount is proving to be much larger than I anticipated. I'll probably end up swapping this for something else, but I think in the meantime it will hold it securely. And for now that's all I can ask. I'll likely add a plastic cover in the future just in case of rain. At this point it was still feeling pretty sketchy, but now I'm hoping to just crank this down and hope for the best. Okay, alright, with a little effort it does seem to stay in place, so it'll do for now, which seems to be the theme of the car at this point. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and following along. I always appreciate it. At this point, I am going to have to start electronic stuff, so stick with me. There should be plenty of goofy and embarrassing things to come. And until then, I'll catch you next time.